Have you ever wondered what you'd do if you discovered your spouse was unfaithful? In this jaw-dropping tale, I found myself in exactly that position, but instead of crumbling, I teamed up with someone unexpected. What followed was a cunning plot of revenge and shocking twists that you won't see coming. If you're ready for a story packed with drama, betrayal, and a sweet taste of justice, you won't want to miss this. Join me as I share this unforgettable journey. Enjoy watching it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, I sat at the small, weathered desk in what was once our shared bedroom. The sight of Melanie's belongings, strewn across the floor in a chaotic mix of trash bags and cardboard boxes, filled me with a mix of sorrow and resolve. This was the end of the line, and the letter I was about to write would serve as my final goodbye. The envelope, already addressed to her, sat ominously on the desk, waiting for my words. The room was eerily silent, save for the occasional creak of the old house, a place that now held too many painful memories to bear. The day I'd discovered Melanie's infidelity was etched into my memory like a scar that refused to fade. It was a scene that played on an endless loop in my mind, especially now, as I sat down to pour my thoughts onto paper. "Dear Melanie," I began, the pen shaking slightly in my hand. The words were difficult to summon, not because I struggled to find what to say, but because they came with a torrent of emotion I wasn't ready to face. Vivian, Jacob's wife, entered the room, her eyes soft yet determined. We had become unlikely allies, bonded over our shared betrayal. She sat across from me, a faint smile on her lips, as if to reassure me that this was the right path. "You sure you want to do this, James?" Vivian asked, her voice gentle but firm. "There's no going back after this." I nodded, meeting her gaze. "It's time, Viv. She made her choice, and so have I." My voice held a note of finality, mirroring the resolve I felt in my heart. I continued to write, recounting the devastating moment I walked into our bedroom and found her with Jacob. The pain of that memory was palpable, but with each word, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. This letter was my closure, my release from the nightmare I'd been living. "She deserves to know the truth, you know," Vivian said, leaning forward. "But make sure you tell her about us last. Let her soak in the rest first." I smirked, appreciating her twisted sense of justice. "Oh, she'll know. And she'll also know just how good we've had it since we left." Vivian chuckled, a sound that brought a hint of lightness to the dark atmosphere. "Good. Let her know what she's lost." As the night deepened, I wrote on, detailing the evidence of her betrayal, the hurtful things Jacob had said, and the plans Vivian and I had made for our new lives. The letter became a catharsis, a means of releasing the pain and moving on. When the letter was finished, I sealed it in the envelope and placed it gently on top of her belongings. I looked over at Vivian, who gave me an encouraging nod. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. This chapter was finally closed. With a sigh of relief, I stood up, my heart lighter than it had been in months. "It's done," I said, a mixture of sadness and hope in my voice. "We're free." Vivian smiled and took my hand. "Yes, we are, James. Now let's start our new beginning." With that, we left the room, leaving behind the remnants of a broken past and stepping into the promise of a brighter future. The next day, I woke up to an empty house, the echoes of laughter and love that once filled it now replaced by a deafening silence. It was unsettling, but also a stark reminder of the unveiling, the moment I had discovered Melanie's betrayal. The memories were as fresh as if they had happened yesterday. I remember vividly the Christmas party, held at the office where both Melanie and I worked. It was a joyous occasion, or so it seemed, with laughter and festive cheer filling the room. I was engrossed in conversation with a few colleagues when I noticed Jacob slipping away. My curiosity piqued when I saw Melanie following closely behind him, giggling like a schoolgirl. Suspicion began to creep into my mind, but I pushed it aside, convincing myself that it was just holiday fun. But as the minutes ticked by and neither Melanie nor Jacob returned, my gut feeling intensified. I excused myself from the group and went in search of them. The sound of whispers and muffled giggles led me to a secluded corner of the office, where the unmistakable sound of intimacy shattered my heart. Through a crack in the door, I saw them together, their bodies entwined in a passionate embrace. The shock of that moment was like a punch to the gut, and I stumbled backward, my mind racing. How could she do this to me? The scene played out like a nightmare, each second more agonizing than the last. As I stood there, rooted to the spot, Vivian appeared, her face ashen and eyes wide with disbelief. "James, I can't believe this," Vivian whispered, her voice shaking with a mix of shock and rage. "How could they do this to us?" I shook my head, unable to find words. The betrayal cut deep, leaving a wound that felt impossible to heal. "I don't know, Vivian," I finally managed to say, my voice hollow. "But they've made their choice." In the days that followed, the truth of Melanie's betrayal became clearer. I confronted her, demanding answers, but all she offered were half-hearted apologies and excuses. The pain was unbearable, but amidst the heartbreak, I found an unexpected ally in Vivian. One evening, as we sat together in a quiet cafe, nursing our bruised hearts, Vivian spoke up. "We can't let them get away with this, James. We deserve better." I nodded, meeting her gaze. "You're right. They need to face the consequences of what they've done." Together, we began to piece together the puzzle of their infidelity. We gathered evidence, uncovered secrets, and slowly, a plan for revenge began to take shape. Each revelation was like a knife to the heart, but it also fueled our resolve to make them pay. One afternoon, as we reviewed the evidence, Vivian leaned closer and whispered, "James, what if we went further? What if we didn't just expose them, but destroyed them?" I looked at her, surprised by the intensity in her voice. "What do you mean?" She smiled, a wicked gleam in her eye. "I mean, we take everything from them. We make them regret ever betraying us." Her words struck a chord, resonating with the anger and pain I felt. "Let's do it," I said, my voice firm. "They need to know what it feels like to be left with nothing." Together we crafted our plan, a carefully orchestrated scheme to ruin Melanie and Jacob. As we worked, a strange sense of camaraderie developed between us, and our shared pain turned into a bond that neither of us expected. By the end of that week, we had a solid plan in place. The unveiling was complete, and now it was time for the reckoning. As I looked at Vivian, I knew that whatever happened next, we were in this together. "To new beginnings," Vivian said, raising her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. And with that, we embarked on our journey of revenge, united in our determination to make Melanie and Jacob pay for their betrayal. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. The betrayal was still raw, but my alliance with Vivian gave me the strength to move forward. We had both been blindsided, and our mutual heartbreak brought us closer together as we plotted our revenge. The irony wasn't lost on me. Melanie's infidelity had brought me a new ally in the most unexpected way. Vivian and I began meeting regularly, initially to strategize, but soon, our conversations drifted to more personal matters. We shared our stories, our dreams, and our fears. It felt liberating to speak openly with someone who understood the pain of betrayal so intimately. One evening, as we sat in Vivian's cozy living room, the remnants of a shared meal scattered on the coffee table, she leaned back with a sigh. "James, how did we end up here?" she asked, her voice heavy with emotion. "It feels like a bad dream." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I know what you mean, Viv. I never imagined I'd be sitting here, planning to ruin the lives of the two people who should have been our partners in life." Vivian looked at me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "We deserve better, James. We deserve happiness." I reached over and took her hand, feeling a surge of protectiveness. "We will have happiness, Viv. We just need to clear this hurdle first." Together, we dove deeper into our plot. We scrutinized our finances, coordinated our legal strategy, and even scouted potential buyers for our properties. The more we worked together, the more our relationship evolved. What began as a partnership in pain gradually transformed into a partnership in love. One night, as we sat together after another long day of planning, Vivian turned to me, her expression tentative. "James, can I ask you something?" "Of course," I replied, curious about the sudden shift in her demeanor. She hesitated, then asked, Do you think this will change us?" I considered her question carefully. "I think it already has, Viv, but maybe that's not a bad thing." She nodded, looking relieved. "I just don't want to lose what we found, even after all of this is over." I smiled and squeezed her hand. "We won't. We've been through too much together already. If anything, this has shown us that we can face anything as long as we're together." Our relationship blossomed as our plan unfolded. The pain of betrayal began to fade, replaced by a new sense of hope and excitement for the future. Vivian and I found ourselves laughing again, enjoying each other's company, and discovering a love that neither of us had expected. We often met in secret to finalize our scheme. One evening, as we were reviewing our legal options, I looked over at Vivian and smiled. "You know, Viv, I think we make a pretty great team." She laughed, a sound that filled the room with warmth. "I think you're right, James, we do. Together we became unstoppable. We sold our homes, emptied the joint bank accounts, and set the stage for our final act of revenge. The alliance we formed was built on shared pain, but it quickly became something much more, a partnership of love and strength that would guide us through the challenges ahead. As we prepared for the final steps of our plan, I knew that no matter what happened, we would face it together. The alliance was no longer just about revenge. It was about building a future together, free from the shadows of our past. And with Vivian by my side, I knew that future was bright. The plan was set, the stage was ready, and the time had come for our final act of revenge. Vivian and I had meticulously crafted our scheme, and now we were ready to execute it. The feeling of anticipation was a mix of nervousness and excitement. But above all, there was a sense of catharsis as we prepared to reclaim our lives from the wreckage Melanie and Jacob had created. Our first step was to deal with the homes. We had already decided to sell both properties and move on from the painful memories they held. The real estate market was in our favor, and we quickly found buyers for both houses. As we signed the final paperwork, Vivian turned to me, her eyes gleaming with a mix of mischief and satisfaction. "I can't believe they signed the powers of attorney without even looking," she said, shaking her head. "Did they really think we'd just leave quietly?" I chuckled, feeling a rare moment of triumph. "I guess they underestimated us, Viv, but that's their mistake." Once the houses were sold, we moved on to the bank accounts. With the powers of attorney, it was surprisingly easy to transfer the funds to new accounts under our names. It was oddly satisfying to see the zero balances on the joint accounts, knowing that our unfaithful spouses would return to find themselves broke. One evening, as we sat together reviewing our finances, Vivian looked up and smiled. "James, we've done it. We're free." I smiled back, feeling a rush of relief. "We really are, Viv. We're finally free." The next phase of our plan involved Jacob's credit cards. With a sense of glee, we booked a luxurious trip to Europe, using his cards to pay for everything. We indulged in 5-star hotels, gourmet meals, and sightseeing tours, all while imagining Jacob's reaction when he saw the charges. In Paris, we sat at a charming cafe, sipping coffee and reveling in our success. "I wish I could see the look on their faces when they realize what we've done," Vivian said, a wicked grin on her face. I laughed, raising my cup in a toast. "To new beginnings, Viv. We deserve this." Our trip was a dream, filled with romance and adventure. As we explored the cities and experienced new cultures, I realized just how much I had grown to love Vivian. She was my partner in crime, my rock, and now, my love. After returning from Europe, it was time for the final blow. We filed lawsuits against Jacob and his employer, suing for alienation of affection. The evidence we had gathered was damning, and the company quickly settled, offering us financial compensation in exchange for our silence. As we sat in the lawyer's office, signing the settlement, Vivian looked over at me, her eyes filled with pride. "We did it, James. We really did it." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "Yes, we did, Viv. And now we can move on." The final act of our plan was the letter. I sat down and wrote to Melanie, detailing everything we had done and letting her know that our marriage was over. As I wrote, I felt a sense of closure, a feeling that I was finally ready to move on from the pain and start a new chapter. With the letter delivered and the plan executed, Vivian and I stood together, ready to face whatever came next. We had taken back our lives, and now we were free to build a future together. "Here's to us, Viv," I said, raising a glass to our newfound freedom. "To us, James," she replied, her smile radiant. "To our future." The plane touched down in Paris, and I looked over at Vivian, her eyes shining with excitement as she peered out of the window. Our European getaway was not just an escape, but a celebration of our new lives. The events leading up to this moment were a whirlwind of betrayal, planning, and sweet revenge, but now we were ready to embrace the adventure that lay ahead. As we stepped off the plane and into the crisp Parisian air, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The city was beautiful, alive with the hum of life and the promise of romance. It was the perfect backdrop for our newfound freedom, and I couldn't wait to explore it with Vivian. We checked into a luxurious 5-star hotel, the kind of place I had always dreamed of staying but never thought I'd be able to afford. The suite was breathtaking, with a view of the Eiffel Tower and a private terrace where we could sip champagne and watch the city lights. "This is amazing," Vivian said, her voice filled with wonder as she looked around the room. "I can't believe we're really here." I smiled, pulling her into a hug. "We deserve this, Viv. After everything we've been through, we deserve a little luxury." Our days in Paris were a whirlwind of exploration and indulgence. We visited museums, strolled along the Seine, and ate at quaint cafes where we savored croissants and coffee. The city was like a dream, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. One afternoon, as we sat in a small bistro watching the world go by, Vivian turned to me, her eyes sparkling. "James, I don't think I've ever been this happy," she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Can you believe everything we've been through?" I shook my head, smiling at the thought. "It's been quite the journey, hasn't it? But I wouldn't trade it for anything, especially if it means I get to be here with you." We toasted to our new beginning and continued our journey across Europe, visiting cities and creating memories that would last a lifetime. In Rome, we tossed coins into the Trevi fountain, making wishes for our future. In Vienna, we danced in the moonlight, the music of a street performer filling the air. In Barcelona, we walked along the beach, our hands intertwined as we talked about our dreams. One evening, as we sat on the terrace of our hotel in Venice, watching the gondolas glide by, Vivian leaned against me and sighed contentedly. "I feel like we're in a fairy tale, James," she said softly. "I never thought I'd find love again, especially not like this." I kissed her forehead, feeling a swell of love for this incredible woman who had become my everything. "We're just getting started, Viv. The best is yet to come." Our European getaway was more than just a vacation. It was a healing journey, a chance for us to leave the past behind and look forward to the future. Each city we visited brought us closer together, and as we explored the wonders of Europe, we discovered the wonders of our love. When we finally returned home, our hearts were full and our minds were clear. We had faced the worst and come out on the other side stronger and happier than ever. Our European adventure was just the beginning, and as we stood together, ready to embark on our next journey, I knew that with Vivian by my side, anything was possible. "Here's to our next adventure," I said, raising a glass of wine as we sat in our new apartment, surrounded by memories of our trip. "To us, James," Vivian replied, her smile radiant. "To our future, and to a love that's worth fighting for." Returning home after our magical European getaway, I was filled with a sense of clarity and resolve. It was time to deliver the final blow, to confront Melanie and Jacob with the consequences of their actions. The evidence we'd gathered, the legal actions we'd taken, and the luxury we'd enjoyed at their expense had set the stage for a powerful ending. I stood outside the house that once held our shared dreams, now just a shell of what it used to be. The for sale sign on the lawn was a testament to the changes that had taken place. As I approached the door, a mix of emotions flooded my mind. Anger, betrayal, and sadness intermingled, but above all, there was a sense of closure. Inside, Melanie sat in the living room, her face pale as she saw me. "James," she stammered, her voice laced with shock and fear. "What are you doing here?" I held up the letter, feeling a calm determination wash over me. "It's time for you to understand what you've done, Melanie," I said, my voice firm. "It's time for you to face the consequences." I handed her the letter and watched as she read, her eyes widening with each line. The devastation on her face was a twisted mix of horror and disbelief. When she finished, she looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. "How could you do this to me?" she cried, her voice breaking. I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. "You did this to yourself, Melanie. You and Jacob made your choices, and now you're facing the repercussions." As I spoke, Jacob entered the room, his face equally pale. "What's going on?" he demanded, looking between us. "What's this about?" I turned to him, feeling a surge of anger. "It's about you, Jacob. It's about how you betrayed your wife, how you flaunted your affair, and how you humiliated me." Vivian appeared behind me, her expression fierce. "It's about how you destroyed our lives, and now we're taking them back." Jacob's face turned red with anger. "You can't do this," he shouted, his voice shaking. "You can't take everything from us." Vivian laughed, a cold and bitter sound. "We already have, Jacob. The houses, the money, even your jobs. You have nothing left." The confrontation escalated, with Melanie and Jacob shouting in disbelief and anger as they learned the extent of our revenge. As their words faded into a mixture of sobs and pleading, I felt a sense of closure washing over me. The final blow had been struck, and there was nothing more to be said. Vivian and I turned to leave, and as we walked out of the house, she looked up at me, her expression softening. "It's over, James," she said gently. "We've done what we needed to do." I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "Yes, Viv, it's over." As we stood together, watching the remnants of our past crumble behind us, I knew that we were ready for a new beginning. The final blow had been delivered, and now we were free to move forward. "Let's go home," Vivian said, her smile warm and inviting. "Let's start our new life together." I smiled back, feeling a sense of peace. "Yes, let's." Together we walked away, leaving the past behind and stepping into a future filled with promise and love. The final blow had been struck, and now it was time to heal and build a new life, one free from betrayal and filled with hope. The aftermath of our revenge was like the calm after a storm. The dust settled, and as Vivian and I looked back on the wreckage left behind, we felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. The betrayal and heartbreak we had endured was no longer our burden, but the aftermath for Melanie and Jacob was just beginning. I sat at the kitchen table in our new apartment, flipping through the pages of a travel magazine. The European getaway had been incredible, but now it was time to think about our future. Vivian walked in, her face thoughtful as she glanced at the letters from our lawyer. "Jacob was fired," she said, sitting down next to me. "The lawsuit hit him hard, and now he's out of a job." I looked at her, seeing the mix of emotions on her face. "How do you feel about that?" I asked, my voice gentle. Vivian shrugged, her gaze distant. "I thought I'd feel more satisfied," she admitted, her voice tinged with sadness. "But now, it just feels empty." I nodded, understanding her sentiment. Revenge doesn't always feel as good as we imagine it will, I said. But it was necessary, Viv. They needed to face the consequences. She looked at me, her eyes reflecting a mix of pain and hope. What about Melanie? She asked. Have you heard anything? I shook my head, glancing at the letter I'd received from her lawyer. She's devastated, I said. She lost her job too, and now she's struggling to make ends meet. Vivian sighed, reaching out to take my hand. We've both lost so much, James, but at least now we can start fresh. We spent the next few days navigating the aftermath, wrapping up loose ends and setting the stage for our future. The settlement from the lawsuit provided us with financial stability, and we began to plan our next steps. One afternoon, as we sat in our new living room surrounded by boxes and the remnants of our old lives, Vivian looked over at me, a hopeful smile on her face. What now, James? She asked. What do we do now? I smiled back, feeling a sense of peace. Now we start our new beginning, Viv, I said. We leave the past behind and look forward to the future. The days turned into weeks, and the weight of the past slowly lifted from our shoulders. Melanie and Jacob faded from our lives, becoming distant memories as we focused on building a new life together. The aftermath of our revenge had been difficult, but it had also been necessary for our healing. One evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset, Vivian looked over at me, her eyes bright with hope. Do you think we'll ever forget about them? She asked softly. I shook my head, smiling gently. No, Viv, but we don't have to. They were a part of our story, but they don't define us. Our future is what matters now. She nodded, leaning against me as we watched the sky turn from gold to deep blue. To our future, she whispered, her voice filled with love. To our future, I echoed, wrapping my arm around her. Together we looked ahead, leaving the aftermath behind and embracing the promise of a new beginning. Vivian and I finally settled into our new life, ready to embark on a journey that was uniquely ours. The pain of betrayal and the triumph of revenge were behind us, replaced by a calm optimism about the future. Our new beginning felt like a breath of fresh air after the chaos we had endured, and we were eager to explore what lay ahead. We decided to travel once more, but this time, it wasn't about escaping from our past. It was about discovering what was possible for our future. We left the remnants of our old lives behind and set out on a road trip across the country, with no set destination and no plan other than to experience life together. One morning, as we drove along a scenic mountain road, the crisp air filled with the scent of pine and adventure, Vivian turned to me with a smile that radiated happiness. James, where do you see us settling down? She asked, her voice filled with genuine curiosity. I thought for a moment, glancing at the breathtaking landscape around us. Somewhere peaceful, I replied, smiling back at her. Somewhere where we can build a new life, free from the past. She nodded, her eyes bright with excitement. I love that idea. I just want a place where we can be happy, where we can grow together. As we continued our journey, we stopped in charming towns and vibrant cities, exploring each place with a sense of wonder and possibility. In each new location, we imagined what it would be like to live there, to start a family, and to create a home filled with love and laughter. One evening, as we sat on a porch overlooking a stunning sunset in a small coastal town, Vivian leaned against me, her voice filled with contentment. I think this might be it, James, she said softly. This place feels like home. I looked out at the view, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I think you're right, Viv, I agreed. This could be the perfect place for our new beginning. We decided to stay in that coastal town, falling in love with its charm and tranquility. We found a cozy cottage overlooking the sea and set about making it our own. The process of building our new life was filled with joy and laughter, a stark contrast to the turmoil we had left behind. One day, as we painted the walls of our new home, Vivian looked over at me with a playful grin. Do you think Melanie and Jacob ever think about us? She asked, her tone light but curious. I laughed, shaking my head. Maybe, but it doesn't matter, I replied. What matters is that we have each other, and we have a future filled with love and happiness. As we settled into our new beginning, we realized that our past had shaped us but didn't define us. The love we found in each other was stronger than the pain we had endured, and our new life was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, as we watched the sun set over the ocean, Vivian took my hand, her voice filled with emotion. "I'm so glad we found each other, James," she whispered, her eyes shining with love. I smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "Me too, Viv," I said softly. "Here's to our new beginning." Together, we faced the horizon, ready to embrace whatever the future held. Our new beginning was bright, filled with promise, and as long as we had each other, we knew we could face anything. Hey listeners, if you enjoyed this video and want to stay up to date with our latest content, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. You definitely won't want to miss what's coming up next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with Sweet Cheating Stories.